Hey everyone, welcome to this new episode. In this video, we're going to look at reframe subscription. So let's get started. So what is reframe subscription? Reframe subscription allows you to access your application DB's data into your application, right? Into your reagent application. Reagent subscription is the reason why reframe is reactive, because to understand subscription, we have to understand the idea of reaction. So reaction is what it allows you to create reactive applications. So when you have a reaction, right, it gives you a reaction, and when you deref a reaction inside a component, the component re-renders. And as you can see, this is version 0.2, right? Again, very simple, 26 lines of code. And there's two components. One is the register, which basically updates this atom with the ID and the handler function, right? ID and the handler function. And then you have the subscribe, which finally you're using it over here like this. And you obviously, we can deref this value because the value here is a reaction, right? So we are calling this handler function, it returns a reaction, and we can deref. And that's how reactivity is working. But what's the problem with this version? The problem with this version is we have to look at actually, there are two problems. One is the subscriptions are not cached. Again, in hindsight, right? People didn't think about this problem since version 8, but one big problem is subscribe function. So in subscribe function, as you can see, it only accepts a vector. So what if you have a vector that changes? Again, you're out of luck because it won't work. And again here, why do you think, so let's look at this, let's analyze this component over here, right? So why is the time color, right, subscribe function outside this function, right? So this is a form2 component, and here we are subscribing to time color outside. This is because if we call this inside here, it means in every re-render, it's going to create this subscribe, it's going to rerun. So it's very inefficient right now. It's not deduplicated yet. It's still duplicated. So yeah, so that's the problem with 0.2. Okay, on to 0.5. 0.5 is okay. So 0.5. So again, you know, there is a couple of new things that was added from 0.2. So let's open 0.2. Okay, core subs. Okay, so we have two side by side. Let's open this one over here. Okay, so on the left hand side, we have a 0.2. On the right hand side, we have a 0.5. Let's see what changes were made. First, we have this function called clear handlers, which basically updates, so nothing really special going on there. The register function is pretty much the same, so nothing changes, but the big change is in the subscribe function, right? Now the idea is not to understand what is happening in every single line, but to understand like the larger picture. You know, by looking at the argument, it can tell us a lot of things about this function. So here we are just passing a single vector, but here you see that we are passing a dynamic vector, right? So for this implementation, it's the copy-paste code, so nothing really changed there. So, you know, you're getting the vector, the handler function. If it's not found, you throw an error. Otherwise, call the handler function, which gives you a reaction, right? But they added this idea of dynamic vector. Now, dynamic vector is interesting because now it makes your subscription functions more usable, right? Now you can pass props to your subscribe functions, and if those prop changes, then it automatically re-renders. How that works, it is implemented from line number 35 to 46. Now, let's go over it from line to line, because you don't, again, have to understand everything, but it's good to try to understand from a high level perspective. You don't have to know how things are getting updated. You know, you don't have to go deeper. We can just stay at this level. So first we are retrieving the event ID, right? The key vector. And then we are looking up the handler function. If the handler function is not found, then so there's also this when debug. So this is in development, we don't care about this. But if the handler function is not found, then we throw an error. Otherwise, now here's the interesting part. First, we are mapping over dynamic vector. Now look at the dynamic vectors. They are all derived, right? Which means the dynamic values are reactions, right? So if you go to an example of 0.5, it'll give you a better example. So let's go to 0.5 examples to the MVC, or maybe did I have a proper example? Oh, here's 0.5 example to the MVC subs. Okay, so let's see how they have used a dynamic vector. Okay, let me go to versions. Which version am I? Good. Version 0.5. Okay. Let's remove this. Let's see if I can find the file. App core views. Okay, so I have found the file. So it is in views, and this example basically I copied from one of the examples that Mike Thompson, and just wanted to show you what value does 0.5 bring in. So here we have a basic application. What it does is it's a shopping cart application, and here we are using dynamic subscription. So let's just look at this, and no, we're not going to go over the whole file, but we're just going to look at this particular file and try to understand what dynamic subscriptions are. So here we are subscribing to the products list. We are passing a single argument, and then we are passing the active product list container here. Now here, okay, active product list for V1. So this is the dynamic active product list V1. Okay, this is the V1. Okay, so in this example, we're going to look at how the 0.5 is used, how it solves some of the problems. So let's go over this example. So basically what we want is we have a problem. And the problem is when the user changes the product, the active product, it is not re-rendering. So how can we solve using, so what is the current solution, right? So this is how you're gonna do it, right? So here we have this is the working solution. So first we are passing an active product, then we are passing the product items. Dynamic subscription. Okay, let's go to dynamic subscription and fix this. let's quit this. Da, 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 da. Reframe. Okay. So there you go. Dynamic subscriptions allow you to create subscriptions that depend on ratums or reactions. So there you go. So basically you're passing a ratum or a reaction as a second argument. And the idea of signals. Again, the signal is basically if the argument changes, then the function reruns. That's the simplest definition of signals. Da, 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 da. But yeah, so this is dynamic subscriptions. And so here, let's look at this example here. So here we are passing a to-do, right? And we're passing the atom, right? So, and then we are passing the to-do dynamic, which is coming from active list. So we are subscribing. So the pattern here is that the powerful idea here is that the ability to pass this guy over here as a second argument. Then you are passing this guy. So this is a reaction because subscribe function returns reaction, and then you have this. Okay, cool. So now we understand what 0.5 is, right? What does 0.5 bring? So if it made dynamic subscription, it made subscriptions more dynamic because now subscriptions are, let's say, now subscription accepts a reaction or a reagent atom as a second argument, and then that can be used to make subscriptions more dynamic because how does dynamic happen if the value of the dereferencing reaction or reagent atom changes and the function re-renders. So that's how it solves this idea of some of the problems in 0.5, 0.2. But that was that solved one problem, but there was another big issue, and that issue is if you go to 0.5 subs, and let's go to 0.8, so it becomes clear what was missing. And it turns out there's a big so if you look at 0.8, and let's put it over here, and then this is 0.5. So 0.5 is 46 lines of code, right? Give or take. And reframe 0.8 is 188 lines of code. So let's try to understand what changes was made. So first of all, in 0.8 is the idea of deduplicated subscriptions, which basically means this, right? So you have, so let's see what new things are added. First, we have this variable kind called sub. Then we have a function called register, which is basically does this, right? The register handler, which is coming from now registrar. Okay, so now the registration is moved to a different file because previously every registrar was living inside, let's say, events, subscriptions, but now from 0.8 it lives under the registrar namespace. And then we are registering the handler function, and then the clear handler, right? Oh, and here's the interesting part: cache and return. So this function is responsible for caching the subscription function. Now, what are the implications of that? It means that if you remember in version 0.2, you could not call subscription functions inside the body of the component because it would create every single time when the function re-renders. But with this caching mechanism, now you can do that and that was a big thing, because now you don't have to write form 2 components if you want to use reframe subscriptions. So it was a nice, developer experience improvement in that part. And here's the cache lookup, right? So here it tries to. So let's look at this function, cache and return. So what it basically does is it accepts three things: the query vector, dynamic vector, and the R. And then you finally have the first you add this function add on depose. So basically when the reaction is not longer being used inside the component, when the component unmounts, this guy gets run, and it just removes the cache key. So it just empties the cache. Otherwise we are updating the cache with the R. So R stands for reaction. So we're caching the reaction. So it does not create it. So it does not get created every single time when the function re-renders. Cache lookup is just we are looking up the cache, and this is probably used in subscribe. So here is the big difference, right? So this is what I mean. Every time a function re-renders, this subscribe function is going to run, right? The subscribe function is going to run, but it's not going to create this reaction, because here we are creating every single time. If you have a handler, so let's say a function re-renders, we're saying, oh, look for this subscription ID, look for its handler, create a reaction, send it to me. But in version 0.8, it says, wait a second, go to the cache lookup, see if I have the cached reaction. If I have the cache reaction, then just send me the cache reaction. Otherwise, cache and return the reaction. That's what's happening basically. If you ignore all the other details, it says if the cache exists in the cache register, great, give me that reaction, right? If not, then create one, cache it, and give me the cached version. And and the same thing with dynamic vector, right? You're still doing the same thing, dynamic variables. That hasn't changed, so you're still passing that. But you don't really need that, because now now what happens is if you go to register, when you register your sub, right? What's happening here is you are still sending a what do you call? Let's look at a simple example. So what's happening here, right? So here, in subscriptions you can pass the for example, like this. You can pass multiple subscriptions, so and then you can get the access to the value. So that's the logic here, right? So it's doing a lot of stuff. Again, you don't need to understand exactly what's happening here. Just understand on a high level. Is what's happening here is taking all this, right? It's taking all these variables, right? And args, right? And then first you're getting the computation function, the handler function, and the middle args, but last. Okay, so it's everything but all these, right? Okay, and this is maybe func, so this is getting the first of the middle, so all these, I guess this one, this value. And here we are conditioning the sub function, right? So when maybe func, so if this is func, then we pass some function. So this is not a function, right? So this is not going to run. So seek arrow args. So if this value arrow args, which is if this is function, then you just, if this is a function, then you are, you're retrieving all these values, right? That's what's happening here. Otherwise, you just get, if this is not a function in this case, it's gonna get all these values from like, so all these, for example. And then that'll give you all these arrow args, and that's what it is. So in this case, this function gets run, and here you go. See, you are mapping the arrow, right? And you see here arrow subs, you're partitioning into two, and then you are partitioning this into two, and then you're getting the last one, so you're getting the subscription. So that's what's happening here. So this function, basically what it does is it extracts this value, and then you're mapping over the last value, right? So that's what arrow subs is. It's a list of subscriptions. That's what arrow subscription is. So it should be called subscription list. Okay, so arrow subs from arrow. Okay, so now next is you're mapping over it, right? You're mapping the subscribe function. Subscribe function returns a subscription, which is a reaction. If you have the count is greater than 1, right? Which it is, then it's just going to return the whole subscription. If it is not, then it's just the first subscription, the first reaction, right? The reaction to the first item. And then you have the LETFM. What is LETFM? What is that? I've never seen that before. Okay, so takes a vector of function specs and a body, generates a set of binding functions to the names. All the names are available in definition functions for the body. Okay. So you're defining multiple functions with this name. So it's a concise way of defining your functions. Okay, I learned something new today, and I hope you did as well. So you're having a bunch of functions, and these are going to be the names. And then here are the names, right? You're calling the subscription, and then you're making a reaction, right? It's because when you register, you create a reaction, and yeah, and that's what is happening when you're doing a register pure. Now this register pure is used. Let's see how this gets used. 0.5, 0.8, and register pure. Core. Register rich sub, apply rich sub raw, subs. Rich sub raw register. So there you go. So register pure is rich sub, right? So when you register a sub, it is calling this whole thing, right? Register pure. So when you register a sub, you pass an ID and a function, and what happens to that function is here you're just going to you're calling this register, right? You're calling this register here, and register here. So what register does is it registers. So its register is coming from here. So it's calling the register handler, kind query ID handler function. So it just adds in the registrar. So here's the registrar, and this atom keeps track of all the registered handlers for subscriptions, events, effects. Yeah, so there's 3 kinds of handlers here. notice there's no COFX, there's no interceptors yet. So these things have not, no, actually that's not true. It is here, but they're not here in this registrar. So here we are just, because interceptor has its own, what do you call? Interceptor has its own, the global interceptor. I think I'm getting too ahead of myself. Atom. Oh, it does use registrar. Okay, so it is using registrar. Registrar. No, it's get handler. So it's only getting the FX key. Okay, so interceptor has nothing to do with registrar. That's great. But this video is not about interceptor. This video is about subscription. So yeah, this is basically what is subscriptions, right? So we looked at the basic version of subscription, which is a static subscription, I would say. It is static because once you pass in the props, right, it's, you cannot really re-render it if the props change. I mean, it does, but let's say you have a computation that relies on extra inputs, right? So let's say you want an active product and you want to display that. It becomes very hard when you are using version 0.2. You have to write a lot of glue code to do that. Version 0.5 introduced the idea of dynamic subscriptions, which basically solved that issue of passing dynamic reagent or reaction values as a subscription input. And in version 0.8 solved this issue of invoking the reaction every single time the function re-renders. So it introduced the idea of deduplicated subscription, which is a fancy way of saying caching. So I hope you like this video. I hope you found this video helpful. And in the next video, we're probably gonna do the second last video of Reframe. We're going to look at interceptors and how it works. And then we're going to close this series of building Reframe by talking about why not Reframe. So we're going to talk about some of its weaknesses, and we're going to get really deep into state management. So yeah, I'm very happy that I'm making videos again. It makes me very happy that you guys are learning what I'm creating. It gives me motivation to make more videos, and yeah, looking forward to make more videos on Reframe and as well as other technological stuff in the future. All right.